Welcome to another video in my series of answering history questions. In this one, I'll show you how to answer the part A of the Edexcel iGCSE History paper 2, and I'm making these videos because I feel they're going to be beneficial to a lot of students who are as confused as I used to be about answering history questions. And so after researching a lot, I have discovered finally through lots of resources and online PDFs, etc., how to answer in the best way. To begin with, let me just tell you what paper 2 is. So, of course, it's a component of the Edexcel iGCSE History specification, and next, it's also known as the Investigation and Breadth Studies paper. Usually, students must answer only one historical investigation and one breadth study, but due to the COVID-19 crisis and all of that, they have decided that the May-June 2021 examinations for history are going to be slightly different, such that you're going to have an option. The students can choose to do either one historical investigation or one breadth study. So in total, they can choose to do, just one question from the entire paper 2, or they can opt to do both as well. So it's up to them if they want to do one question from paper 2 or both. And it's slightly confusing. And of course, for more information about this, you can go and check the updates on the Pearson website, and their website is going to be linked down below as usual. Next, 2 sources and 1 extract is provided for each question in paper 2, and I'm not going to be going into detail about these sources and the extract because it's not linked to part A of paper 2, it's linked to the other parts of paper 2. So since there's no source or extract needed for answering part A, I'm simply going to go ahead and talk about the details of part A of a question in paper 2, and you don't need to get confused. It's quite simple to answer, and I'll make it even easier for you to understand how to answer this question, hopefully after you watch this video. Okay, so the most important thing you need to know is that this part is for 6 marks, therefore you should spend roughly 8 minutes on it, not too long. I know 8 minutes sounds like very less, but you really have to time yourself to do it within that much time, because you are going to have to spend most of your time on the other 2 questions because they're longer and require more of your attention and focus. And of course, history is all about time management, because you might have to do 2 questions in paper 2 if you're opting for that in 2021. Otherwise, if you're going to be doing this exam in any other year, then you will have to definitely be doing 2 questions in paper 2, and therefore you really need a lot of time and you have to manage it. So you should spend roughly 8 minutes in this question, and this is known as a describe 2 features question. That's what I call it, so that I can remember what this question assesses. So it basically asks you to describe 2 features, 2 prominent features of an event or an occurrence, based on whatever country you're answering about. So of course, there is an option of 2 events provided for students, which makes it easier. So for example, they'll ask you to describe 2 features of this event or that event. And to make things easier for you to understand, here is an example from the USA 1918 to 1941, which inshallah I will be attempting in 2021. So this is just a sample assessment material from Pearson website. Describe 2 key features of either the bonus marchers or the 100 days. And as you can see in the corner, it is for 6 marks, as I said. Now, of course, since either and or is bold, you have to definitely choose only one event. You can't write 2 features of both. You have to write only about one. And you have to remember to mention 2 features in total. Don't write about 1 feature and think that you've written about 2. They have to be 2 distinct features of the event. So for example, 2 features of the bonus marchers, or if you're going for the other one, 2 features of the 100 days. And therefore, since you're going to be describing 2 features, you have to write 2 paragraphs in total, paragraphs, whatever. And yeah, also don't forget to use SPEND information, and I have mentioned this in my previous videos quite a lot. SPEND stands for statistics, places, events, names, and dates, which are all part of evidence and statistical data in history, which is very crucial for getting you the top marks. And The last most important point is that you should use the peel method, and if you don't know what it is, since you might have not have watched my previous videos or you generally don't know what it is, then let me go ahead and tell you. Don't get confused, it's okay. It's quite simple. P stands for point, E stands for evidence, the second E stands for explanation, and L stands for link. So in total, you have to use peel, this whole formula, in one paragraph. So one paragraph starts off with a point, a clear, precise point, which is basically your feature of the event, and then you provide evidence, which is spend, as I mentioned before. Then you explain all of that and how it's linked to the point in the end. I hope you understand this, and if you want to know in more detail about how to use this, you can go and watch my other video on part B in paper 1, and it's going to be linked at the top and below. Next, let's go on to look at an example paragraph 1. So of course I said there have to be 2 paragraphs, so this is just an example paragraph 1. I've not written it. It's a sample student answer which has received full marks from the examiner due to, of course, the reasons which I'll mention later on. Let's just read it. One of the features of the 100 days, the 100 days is the event which the student has chosen to describe. So one of the features of the 100 days was Roosevelt's determination to take away the fear that the American people were feeling. One of the ways he did this was to talk to ordinary Americans over the radio. These conversations became known as fireside chats, and in them Roosevelt explained what he was trying to do using language that ordinary citizens would understand. He made 30 of the speeches and was the first American president to do this. So in this paragraph, the best thing is that the student starts out by clearly pointing out what their feature is, what they're talking about in relation to the event. So he or she clearly points out that the feature they are describing over here is Roosevelt's determination to take away the fear that the American people were feeling. So that is one feature which the student has focused on in this paragraph, and he or she goes on to explain how Roosevelt did this. As you can see, one of the ways he did this, and he even provides evidence, became known as fireside chats, and then he linked it back to the question, because that is very crucial. It makes the examiner feel as if you truly understand the event and know how important it was, and you know how to describe it well. Of course, there's not much statistical data in this answer, as in there are no dates and not any other sort of references to other people, but still it has received full marks from the examiner because it has a thorough explanation of the feature. But of course, to be safe, you should include as much spend information as possible. Let's move on to the second paragraph. Now, the second paragraph is your other feature. Another feature of the 100 days was that it set out to help farmers. The Agricultural Adjustment Act gave subsidies to farmers so that they could cut down their production. This meant that less wheat and cotton was produced, and so prices rose to a point where farmers could make a living. Roosevelt also set up the Farm Credit Administration to help farmers pay their mortgages. So this is a very nice, straightforward answer where the student immediately also conveys what his second feature is by saying another feature of the 100 days was that it set out to help farmers, and then he gives evidence for this by mentioning the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which is an example of spent information, and it's a good piece of evidence that the student has provided, which is also probably another reason why this answer has received full marks. Of course, if you were just to mention one feature of the event, you're going to get like around 3 marks or something out of 6. You're not going to get full marks, of course, because each point is roughly 3 to 4 marks. If you think you've written 2 features, but you've actually just written 1 in 2 paragraphs, you will not get marks. So you have to be careful about that. Before I end this video, let me just sum up the whole thing and tell you some important points which you should definitely remember if you're still confused about this, which I hope you're not, because then that means that I'm not good at explaining. But yeah, number 1. Spend only 8 minutes on this question. As I said before, this is very important. It comes under time management. Number 2, mention 2 distinct points or features, which I just said right now as well. Use phrases like one feature is, another feature is that, on the other hand, etc. Examiners like this because it clearly shows that you know how to distinguish between your different features and you have a good structure in your answer. And you're not just, throwing in points wherever you remember them. You are actually structuring your answer and, using these transitional phrases. Next, you should provide precise, clear, and accurate evidence. Don't provide evidence that's not related to what you're saying. don't provide evidence that just popped up in your head and you thought it would be useful, but it's not. Provide evidence that's linked to the topic and is statistical, includes places, events, names of people, and dates. As I said, spend information. Then don't write more than 2 paragraphs. Don't waste your time including an introduction and a conclusion, because you won't be able to finish that in 8 minutes. And lastly, try to make links between your points or your features if it's possible for you. If you're capable of making links between both of your points and showing how they're connected to each other, that's great, and that's going to get you more marks. But if you're not capable of doing that, like me, I'm really not good at linking points together, then you should not try to do that, because if you make a wrong connection, it's not going to make you look like you're smart or you know about the event that much. And that's all for this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please like it and share it with those who might benefit as well. And if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. And for more videos like this one, you can check my playlist on history iGCSE answers, where I have a guide on paper 1 questions as well if you have not watched those. Thank you.